Admiral Chen motioned for her aide to bring refreshments as the Concordat delegation's translator devices hummed with quiet deliberation. The observation deck's reinforced windows framed Earth in the distance, a blue marble wrapped in the orbital infrastructure humanity had built over the past century. "Perhaps there is a misunderstanding," Chen offered diplomatically. "We have military traditions and hierarchies, but we don't attribute our tactical developments to divine sources." Kelvor's upper limbs performed a gesture the translation software couldn't interpret. The alien's exoskeleton clicked as it adjusted posture, all 8 eyes focusing intently on Chen. "All spacefaring species receive guidance from their war deities," Kelvor insisted. "The mathematical precision of your orbital defense grid follows patterns we've observed across 17 distinct civilizations. Such convergence cannot be coincidence." UN Secretary Jiang stepped forward, his expression carefully neutral. "Admiral Chen speaks the truth. Earth's history contains many war gods, Ares, Mars, Tyre, Hachiman, but we outgrew such beliefs. Our military doctrine evolved through human experience, not divine instruction." The translator relayed Jiang's words, causing visible agitation among the Concordat representatives. Their communication specialist, a slender being with translucent skin showing pulsing internal organs, rapidly manipulated a crystalline device. "Scans confirm no significant religious structures in your major military installations," the specialist announced, confusion evident despite the mechanical translation. "How do your warriors receive battlefield wisdom?" Chen exchanged another glance with Jiang. Something wasn't right about this fixation on deities. First contact protocols hadn't prepared them for theological debates. "We study history," Chen explained carefully. "We learn from past conflicts, simulate potential scenarios, and adapt our strategies accordingly. Our strength comes from questioning assumptions, not following them blindly." The statement triggered an immediate reaction. The Concordat delegates huddled together, appendages gesturing animatedly as they conversed in their native tongue, translation devices temporarily disabled. Captain Rivera, Chen's security chief, subtly positioned herself closer to the Admiral. "They're alarmed by something you said," she whispered, hand resting near her sidearm. When the aliens turned back, their body language had shifted dramatically. Where there had been curiosity, now Chen detected something far more concerning, fear mixed with calculation. "Fascinating cultural variation," Chelvor announced, mandibles now perfectly still. "We wish to learn more about your historical approach. The Concordat proposes an exchange of knowledge. We will share our stellar cartography while studying your military archives." Chen felt the familiar tightening in her chest that had saved her life during the Mars Rebellion, instinct warning her of hidden dangers. The offer was too convenient, too focused. "A generous proposal," she replied smoothly. "Though our military archives are classified, we could arrange educational exchanges on historical tactics. Perhaps beginning with ancient Earth conflicts, the Peloponnesian War might interest you." Chelvor's translator conveyed agreement, but Chen noted how the alien's secondary eyes remained fixed on the tactical display showing Earth's defense grid. Something predatory lurked behind that gaze. As the meeting concluded with promises of future discussions, Admiral Chen activated her neural implant with a subtle eye movement, sending a priority message to Earth Defense Command. "Implement Protocol Vigilant Shield. First contact potentially compromised. These visitors aren't just interested in cultural exchange. They are conducting military reconnaissance under diplomatic cover." The Concordat vessel departed with ceremonial pleasantries, but Chen watched it go with growing certainty. Humanity had just encountered something far more dangerous than simple alien curiosity. They had stumbled upon a galactic ideology that viewed Earth's approach to warfare as something impossible, incomprehensible, or perhaps worse, heretical. The footsteps behind Dr. Williams grew closer, echoing off ancient marble. He turned slowly, finding himself face to face with a Concordat cultural attaché, Nexthal according to the diplomatic credentials, hovering in Williams' augmented reality display. Unusual research focus for someone with military clearance, the alien observed, compound eyes reflecting the holographic images of disgraced war gods surrounding them. Williams kept his expression neutral. "I'm an archaeologist specializing in comparative mythology. Admiral Chen requested information on historical war deities after your delegation's questions. And what conclusions have you reached?" Next, Thal moved closer to examine a Roman fresco showing Mars being captured in Vulcan's net, humiliated before the other gods. Human cultures consistently depicted war gods as powerful but deeply flawed, Williams explained, gesturing toward the displays. Ours was portrayed as bloodthirsty yet cowardly. Norse mythology's Tyr sacrificed his hand for peace. The pattern repeats globally. Our war deities embodied conflict's destructive nature, not its glory. Next, Thal's appendages twitched in what Williams had learned was discomfort. Your species deliberately weakened your divine generals. How did you expect to survive? Williams activated another display showing the evolution of Earth's military philosophy by separating the concept of necessary defense from the glorification of violence itself. We honored strategists, peacekeepers, and reluctant warriors, those who fought when necessary but preferred peace. The alien moved with surprising speed, chitinous limbs manipulating the archive controls. Ancient texts from a dozen civilizations flashed before them, each showing war gods subordinate to deities of wisdom, justice, or harmony. Systematic theological sabotage, Nexthal muttered. Your species engineered its own cultural immunity. Immunity to what? Williams asked, the archaeologist in him instantly alert. The alien froze, realizing its error. A figure of speech. Your history is simply unusual. Williams noticed the translator device on Nexthal's thorax, subtly transmitting data that wasn't being verbalized. His implant flagged the transmission, automatically recording the encrypted signal. Perhaps you'd like copies of our mythological archives for your comparative studies. Williams offered casually, watching the alien's reaction. That would be acceptable, Nexthal replied too quickly. The Concordat appreciates full documentation of cultural anomalies. Williams guided the alien through additional exhibits, carefully noting which displays triggered the strongest reactions. The Greek pantheon with Athena outmaneuvering Ares elicited particular interest, as did Chinese texts showing military strategists emphasizing the supremacy of winning without fighting. As they reached the archive exit, Nexthal paused. One final question, Dr. Williams. If your ancestors destroyed your war gods for being too soft, what did you replace them with? The question carried hidden weight, loaded with assumptions Williams couldn't fully decipher. He chose his words carefully. We didn't replace them. We outgrew them. Humanity learned that dividing the cosmos into domains of divine specialists, war, wisdom, love, oversimplified the complexity of existence. We understood that courage without wisdom becomes brutality, that strength without restraint becomes tyranny. Next, Thal's posture shifted subtly. Something about William's answer had confirmed a suspicion. How unfortunate for you, the alien said quietly. The cosmos needs proper order. As Williams watched Nexthal depart, His implant completed analysis of the encrypted transmission. The partial decryption contained a single phrase in the Concordat's language, roughly translated as "Philosophical Quarantine Protocols Authorized." Williams immediately copied his findings to a quantum-secured drive. Whatever the Concordat was looking for in humanity's past, they had found something that deeply disturbed them, and that made humanity dangerous in their eyes. Williams tracked time by his heartbeats, a meditation technique taught during his expeditions to isolated ruins. 6,000 beats had passed in this impossible chamber, approximately 1 hour. The shifting geometries of the walls seemed designed to disorient, angles bending in ways that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. "Your species rejected divine guidance in warfare," came the disembodied voice again, neither male nor female, its tone clinically precise. "Yet you developed effective planetary defenses. Explain this contradiction." Williams focused on a fixed point in the room to maintain his equilibrium. "No contradiction exists. We studied conflict as a problem to solve rather than a state to glorify. Our military doctrine evolved through analysis of past mistakes, not through religious doctrine." A panel in the wall slid open, revealing a holographic display. Images from Earth's military history flickered in rapid succession. Alexander's phalanx formations, Napoleonic artillery tactics, modern orbital defense grids. "These patterns match those of 16 other species," the voice stated. "Species who properly honored their war deities. The statistical probability of convergent evolution is negligible." Williams leaned forward, his academic interest piqued despite the circumstances. "Or perhaps effective tactical development follows universal principles, regardless of cultural framework. Physics and mathematics remain constant across the cosmos." A vibration passed through the chamber. Williams realized it was the equivalent of whispered conversation among his observers. Through the one-way field, he glimpsed multiple species in heated discussion. "You attribute to natural development what can only be divine guidance," the voice finally responded. "This delusion threatens the Concordat's understanding of cosmic order." The room temperature dropped several degrees. Williams' breath formed visible clouds as he replied, "Different cultures develop different explanations for similar phenomena. What you attribute to deities, we attribute to human innovation." Another panel opened, revealing artifacts Williams recognized from Earth museums. Ancient Greek helmets, samurai swords, remnants of nuclear missiles. Artifacts that should have been impossible for the Concordat to obtain. "Your own military leaders prayed before battle," the voice challenged. "Many did," Williams acknowledged. "Faith is a human constant, but the content evolved. Early generals prayed for bloodlust and victory at any cost. Later ones prayed for wisdom, for minimal casualties, for the courage to seek peace when possible." The temperature dropped further. Ice crystals formed on the chamber walls. "A species that does not properly honor martial virtues cannot be trusted to wield interstellar capabilities responsibly," the voice announced with finality. "The philosophical contamination must be contained." Williams stood, ignoring the cold numbing his extremities. "What exactly are you afraid will contaminate?" Silence followed his question. Then, unexpectedly, a different voice answered, softer, almost furtive. "The young species, those not yet fully indoctrinated. Your perspective would cause questions." The admission revealed volumes. Williams pressed his advantage. "You're not conducting an interrogation. You're performing an ideological quarantine. What happens to species who fail your theological test?" Instead of answering, the fields around the chamber deactivated. Williams found himself facing 3 different alien species, the eight-eyed Calvor from First Contact, a towering crystalline entity, and a smaller being with translucent skin. You misunderstand our purpose, the crystalline being vibrated, creating speech. We do not destroy philosophical contaminants. We simply ensure they remain isolated until proper perspective can be established. Williams recognized the euphemism for what it was. Humanity won't be confined or corrected to suit your theological framework. The smallest alien stepped forward, skin pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. That choice is not yours to make. The quarantine fleet has already been dispatched. Admiral Chen maintained a neutral expression as High Marshal Zexnar conducted the ceremonial tour of the Concordat Council chamber. The walls displayed weapons from 1,000 worlds, some ceremonial, others bearing the unmistakable scars of actual combat. Each weapon, Zexnar explained through the translator, represented a species that had ascended to proper understanding within the Concordat hierarchy. This ceremonial blade belonged to the Thraxian High Command. Zexnar indicated a curved weapon with glowing runes. They resisted proper reverence for 2 generations before recognizing the wisdom of our ways. Chen nodded politely, while her enhanced peripheral vision noted the subtle security systems integrated throughout the chamber. "And these empty displays?" she asked, gesturing towards several vacant pedestals. "Reserved for future members," Zexnar replied with a clicking sound the translator didn't convert. "Perhaps one will soon bear an Earth artifact." Intelligence Officer Amara Okafor approached with practiced deference, bowing as protocol demanded before handing Chen a crystalline data tablet. Seemingly a Concordat device, but actually Earth technology disguised to match alien aesthetics. The quantum-encrypted message scrolled across its surface, visible only through Chen's ocular implants. Williams extracted from Concordat vessel. Debriefing confirms hostile intent. Pattern analysis complete. 17 previous civilizations received identical alliance offers before disappearing from historical record. Quarantine fleet detected at system edge. Estimated arrival 72 hours. Chen handed the tablet back to Okafor with the slightest nod, then turned to Zexnar with a carefully calibrated smile. "Your collection is impressive. Earth would be honored to learn more about your traditions." The Concordat delegation visibly relaxed, all 8 species showing biological signs of reduced tension. They believed the deception was working. "Excellent," the High Marshal responded. "Our theological architects have prepared instruction manuals for proper temple construction. Your military leadership must oversee the rituals personally. The war deity must be properly honored by those who command your forces." "Of course," Chen agreed smoothly. "Though our engineers may need guidance on the technical specifications. Perhaps your experts could review our existing military infrastructure to suggest optimal sites for these temples." Zexanar's approval was immediate, exactly as Chen had anticipated. The Concordat's religious fixation blinded them to the tactical implications of their cultural exchange. As they moved toward the ceremonial dining hall, Chen activated her secure neural link to Earth Defense Command. Her subvocalized message transmitted instantly through quantum channels. Operation Trojan Horse authorized. Phase 1. Apparent compliance. Prepare temple facades at designated locations. Phase 2. Deploy infiltration teams to all Concordat observer vessels. Phase 3. Activate Prometheus Protocol. High Marshal Zexanar gestured toward an elaborate display showing holographic battle formations. "These sacred maneuvers have brought the Concordat victory for 10,000 years. Your military academies must implement them immediately to achieve proper alignment." Chen studied the tactical displays, her military training instantly recognizing the fundamental flaws in these supposedly divine formations. They prioritized ceremonial precision over tactical advantage, religious symmetry over practical deployment. Against an adaptive opponent, these formations would be catastrophically vulnerable. "Fascinating," she replied. "We will begin implementation immediately." As the diplomatic reception continued, Chen maintained her performance of respectful interest. Meanwhile, Earth's defense forces were already adapting, analyzing every detail of Concordat doctrine for exploitable weaknesses. The aliens believed themselves to be converting humanity to their war religion. They failed to realize they were revealing their playbook to the most adaptable military minds in the sector. When the Concordat quarantine fleet arrived, they would face an opponent who had already dismantled their sacred tactics and rebuilt them into something entirely unexpected. Major Takashi Akida watched his special operations team execute the simulation for the 7th time. The holographic Concordat vessels moved with mathematical precision, following the exact patterns recorded during their ceremonial fleet exercises. Too precise, too predictable. Again, he ordered, resetting the scenario. "This time, I want Team Delta to intentionally create an asymmetrical response, violate their sacred geometry, and observe the reaction." Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez, Delta team leader, adjusted her neural interface. "Rules of engagement, sir." "Unpredictability is your only directive," Akida replied. "Do whatever they least expect." The simulation began again. This time, when the Concordat forces formed their perfect hexagonal attack pattern, Delta team scattered in seemingly random directions, abandoning conventional formation entirely. The AI-simulating Concordat response hesitated, its decision matrix temporarily overwhelmed by options outside its programming parameters. "There," Akida pointed to the holographic display. 7-second hesitation before adaptation. That's our window. Colonel Wei from Tactical Analysis approached with a data tablet. "We've compiled results from 37 simulations. The pattern is consistent. Concordat forces pause between 5.8 and 8.2 seconds when faced with tactics that violate their doctrinal expectations. It's as if they're waiting for instructions that never arrive." Akeda nodded. "Religious conditioning. They're literally incapable of improvisation without consulting their doctrinal hierarchy." Across the asteroid belt training facility, similar discoveries emerged from each specialized team. Communications specialists identified ritual phrases in Concordat transmissions that always preceded tactical adjustments. Engineering teams found structural vulnerabilities in Concordat vessel designs, weaknesses preserved through millennia because altering them would violate sacred proportions. Lieutenant Sofia Reyes' infiltration report arrived via quantum burst transmission, confirming their findings. Posing as a cultural attaché aboard a Concordat vessel, she had accessed their tactical databases. Her message was concise: command structure entirely hierarchical. All decisions require ritual validation. No tactical improvisation permitted without authorization from theological authorities. In the facility's central command hub, Akida assembled the team leaders. Behind them, the false temple facade concealed Earth's most advanced combat simulation center. Similar facilities operated throughout the solar system, each disguised as the religious infrastructure the Concordat expected. "They believe we're learning their ways," Akida told the assembled officers. "In reality, we're dissecting their psychological vulnerabilities. Their greatest strength, absolute faith in their doctrine, is their critical weakness." Commander Isha Khan from Psychological Operations presented her analysis. The Concordat species aren't naturally rigid. Their neural scans show the same capacity for adaptation that most spacefaring species develop. This inflexibility is artificially imposed, systematic conditioning disguised as religious doctrine. Which explains why they're so threatened by us, Akida concluded. Humanity rejected that conditioning before it could be fully implemented. We're not just enemies. We are heretics who prove their entire system is unnecessary. The facility's quantum alert system activated. Admiral Chen's message appeared on the central display. Concordat quarantine fleet has accelerated. Arrival in 36 hours. All units initiate Phase 3 protocols immediately. Akida turned to his officers. You've all studied their patterns. Now forget everything they expect us to do. Conventional formations, standard responses, predictable counters. Abandon them all. From this moment forward, we fight with one doctrine only: be what they cannot predict. As Earth's defense forces mobilized across the solar system, they did so not as a coordinated army following sacred patterns, but as something the Concordat had never encountered, a military that had systematically rejected the very concept of doctrinal warfare. Dr. Williams stared at the holographic patterns hovering above the converted mining facility's central table. Beside him, Dr. Nadia Patel manipulated the translation matrix, her fingers dancing through haptic interfaces as she refined the algorithm. There, she said, highlighting a recurring sequence in the Concordat religious texts. This isn't symbolic language, it's executable code disguised as liturgy. Williams leaned closer. The patterns are too precise, too mathematical to have evolved naturally through cultural development. The quantum-secure chamber hummed with processing power as Earth's most advanced AI systems analyzed the Concordat religious texts recovered from diplomatic exchanges. What had initially appeared to be mere theological documents now revealed their true nature: behavioral programming masked as divine mandate. Look at this passage. Williams pointed to a section labeled as the 16th revelation of the war deity. It isn't describing battle formations. It's literally programming neural responses to combat situations. These aren't prayers. They are subroutines designed to override independent tactical thinking. Admiral Chen's holographic avatar appeared at the table, her expression grave despite the transmission delay from Jupiter orbit. Can you determine the origin? Who programmed the Concordat species? Patel nodded, bringing up another display. We've managed to extract metadata embedded in their oldest texts. The coding style matches fragments found in ruins across 3 sectors, all attributed to a species called the Architects. The Architects didn't conquer through direct force, Williams explained, accessing historical records. They created client races programmed for absolute loyalty. The Concordat began as their military enforcers, conditioned to spread the control mechanisms to other species. But the Architects themselves, Chen asked. Extinct for at least 50,000 years, Patel replied. But their programming lives on through the Concordat, a self-perpetuating ideological virus. Williams brought up tactical simulations based on their findings. The Concordat's rigid battle doctrines aren't just religious traditions, they are firewall protocols designed to prevent client species from developing unpredictable tactics that might threaten the control system. Which explains their reaction to humanity, Chen concluded. Our rejection of war deities wasn't just theological evolution, it was accidentally developing immunity to their control mechanism. The facility's quantum alert system chimed. Lieutenant Commander Ramirez from Signal Intelligence appeared on a secondary display. We've intercepted and decoded Concordat communications to their homeworld. You need to see this immediately. The transmission appeared beside the religious texts, and the correlation was unmistakable. The Concordat leadership was experiencing a crisis of confidence. Their reports described humans as divinely unconstrained and algorithm-resistant. Most concerning was their conclusion: the infection must be quarantined before it spreads to susceptible species. They don't see us as enemies to be conquered, Williams realized. They see us as a virus that threatens their entire system of control. Chen's avatar nodded grimly, which makes negotiation impossible. They can't risk exposing more of their species to our influence. Patel highlighted another section of code embedded in the Concordat texts. There's something else. These behavioral algorithms contain a fundamental vulnerability, a master override designed by the architects to maintain ultimate control of their creations. Can we use it? Chen asked. Not directly, Williams replied. But we can create what might be called an ideological vaccine. Information specifically designed to help Concordat individuals recognize their own programming. Chen's expression hardened with resolve. Develop it immediately. We won't defeat the Concordat by destroying their ships. We'll free them by breaking their chains. As the quarantine fleet approached Earth orbit, humanity prepared a defense unlike any in its history, not weapons of destruction, but tools of liberation designed to combat the oldest and most insidious form of warfare, the conquest of minds through false divinity. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the EDF Resilience, watching the tactical display as the Concordat fleet emerged from their final jump point near Jupiter's orbit. 16 warships arranged in perfect geometric formation, a hexagonal pattern with support vessels positioned at mathematically precise intervals. Beautiful, symmetrical, and utterly predictable. They're broadcasting the ritual of righteous conquest, Communications Officer Park reported. Standard opening as recorded in previous encounters. Chen nodded. And our response? Silence on all channels as ordered. Their doctrine requires acknowledgement before attack. They're repeating the ritual transmission. The minutes stretched. On the tactical display, the Concordat formation remained frozen in perfect symmetry, waiting for humanity to play its assigned role in their cosmic drama. They expect us to either capitulate or deploy in standard defensive formation. Tactical Officer Rivera noted. The longer we do neither, the more we disrupt their programmed sequence. Chen activated the fleet-wide command channel. All units, execute Operation Antithesis. Across the Jupiter defense perimeter, Earth vessels powered down weapon systems and communication arrays. Automated drone platforms on Ganymede's surface remained dormant. The asteroid belt defense grid showed no signs of activation. The Concordat fleet adjusted position slightly, maintaining their sacred geometry while advancing toward the inner system. Their communication channels buzzed with increasing agitation, ritual phrases repeated with growing urgency as they sought the expected response. They're initiating attack pattern vengeance sequence, Rivera reported, targeting our Jupiter outposts with long-range weaponry. Chen's expression remained calm. Hold positions. Let them commit fully to their doctrine. The Concordat vessels fired in perfect synchronization, energy weapons lancing toward Jupiter's moons, where human outposts were clearly visible. The blasts struck empty decoys, sophisticated holograms projecting false heat signatures and structural profiles. Now, Chen ordered. Earth's response defied every expectation in the Concordat tactical database. Instead of emerging from behind Jupiter in defensive formation, human vessels appeared from within the planet's upper atmosphere where they had been hiding, an impossible position according to Concordat doctrine, which considered gas giant immersion sacrilegious to vessel sanctity. Drone swarms activated not from Ganymede as expected, but from within the radiation belts of Jupiter itself, areas the Concordat considered spiritually impure and thus safe from enemy presence. The Concordat communication channels erupted with confusion. Their perfect formation wavered as commanders sought guidance from their theological authorities, the programmed response when facing the unexpected. 7-second hesitation window confirmed, Rivera announced, exactly as Major Ikeda predicted. All units, Phase 2, Chen commanded. Earth vessels engaged using tactics that violated every principle of the Concordat's sacred warfare. Ships deliberately broke formation, attacked from dishonorable angles, and engaged in maneuvers the Concordat considered tactically impure. Each violation forced additional hesitation as the enemy commanders sought validation from doctrine that could not account for humanity's heretical approach. The crystalline flagship of the Concordat fleet attempted to reorganize its forces into the Purification Array, a formation designed to counter chaotic elements. Chen had anticipated this exact response. "Deploy the Liberation Protocol," she ordered. Across all channels, Dr. Williams and Dr. Patel's carefully crafted message began broadcasting, not in human language, but in the precise mathematical sequences of the architect's original programming language. The message contained a simple but devastating revelation, the truth about the origins of the Concordat's divine commandments. As the battle raged across Jupiter's orbit, something unprecedented occurred on 3 Concordat vessels. Their weapons powered down, communication arrays redirected. The programming that had controlled their crews for millennia began to fracture under the weight of a simple, terrible truth. Their gods had never existed. 3 months after the Battle of Jupiter, Admiral Chen stood in the Geneva War Temple, a structure built to Concordat specifications, but reproposed in a way its designers never intended. Instead of hosting rituals to non-existent deities, the temple now served as a diplomatic forum where representatives from 27 former Concordat species gathered to forge a new kind of interstellar community. High Commander Vextal, once the Concordat's most devoted theological enforcer, approached Chen with the formal gait of someone still adapting to newfound mental freedom. The neural deprogramming process had left many Concordat leaders with a distinctive hesitation in their movements, phantom responses to commands no longer controlling their minds. "The last loyalist fleet has stood down," Vextal reported. Mandibles clicking in what Chen had learned was their expression of profound emotion. "The Liberation Protocol has reached 93% of our former territories. The Concordat, as a control system, has effectively collapsed." Chen nodded, watching Dr. Williams and Dr. Patel demonstrate the architect programming fragments to a group of alien scientists. "And your people, how are they adapting to freedom?" "With difficulty," Vextal admitted. "Imagine discovering that your most sacred beliefs were software installed without your consent. Many experience what your psychologists call existential crisis. But the younger generations adapt more readily. Across the chamber, representatives from species that had been mortal enemies mere months ago now collaborated on dismantling the remaining architect control systems lurking in their cultural frameworks. The Liberty Coalition, as they called themselves, had discovered over 300 distinct control mechanisms disguised as traditions, taboos, and religious practices. The Naharian delegation has requested human guidance in reforming their military doctrine, Vextal noted. "They find your approach illuminating." "We'll provide advisors," Chen promised. "Though perhaps guides would be a better term. We won't replace one form of control with another." Dr. Williams joined them, carrying an ancient text recovered from the Concordat archives. "We've identified the origin point," he announced. "The architects' homeworld, where they first developed the control algorithms before their own creations turned against them. The ultimate irony," Vextal observed. "They programmed us to worship war gods, yet fell to the very warriors they created." Chen studied the assembled delegates, beings from across the galaxy united not by conquest or coercion, but by the shared experience of liberation. The question remains, what replaces the control system? Your species have known nothing else for millennia. Williams gestured toward the center of the temple, where the original war temple altar had been replaced with a simple monument bearing inscriptions from 100 worlds, each representing that species' first independent decision after liberation. Not another system, he suggested, but a principle. The freedom to question, to decide, to evolve without predetermined paths. Vextal's posture straightened with newfound resolve. The architects believed control was necessary for stability. You proved otherwise. Humanity's rejection of war gods wasn't weakness. It was evolutionary advancement. Chen watched as a young diplomatic cadet approached, carrying the formal charter for the newly formed Sovereignty Accords, a framework for interspecies cooperation based not on shared worship or enforced doctrine, but on mutual respect for self-determination. "We destroyed our gods of war for being too soft," Chen reflected. "In doing so, we discovered something stronger than divine commandment, the courage to forge our own path." As representatives from worlds spanning 3 galactic arms prepared to sign the charter, Chen realized that humanity had achieved something no war god could have granted: victory not through domination, but through liberation.